Welcome to the Fraser History Museum as we partner with the city's Office of Equity for tonight's community forum, the DOJ Report, and we're calling it The Way Forward. I'm Rachel Platt, the Director of Community Engagement here at the Fraser. This forum is part of our series that we do called Let's Talk, Bridging the Divide. We want to provide a space for important conversations with the intent of making Louisville a better place for everyone.
And I'm Joy McAtee, the Executive Director of the city's Office of Equity. The recently released Department of Justice report has been called everything from scathing to blistering, finding that the city and its police department have violated the constitutional rights of our citizens, particularly Black people.
That nearly 90-page report, who's read it? Anybody in the audience? A lot of you have already read it. Okay. The nearly 90-page report covers everything from excessive force, conducting searches on invalid warrants, to unlawful stops and violating the rights of people engaged in protected speech and protests critical of policing. We also want to point out, the report also said most Metro employees and LMPD officers are dedicated public servants who work hard to promote public safety. But Louisville Metro and LMPD fail to ensure all employees uphold the federal, constitutional, and statutory rights of people in Louisville.
So tonight, we gather to talk about the way forward and how we do that when so many in our community are hurting and have been impacted by what was detailed in this report, and whose trust has been tested again and again. Some of those impacted are with us tonight, and we'll talk about what they see as the way forward a little later. Many people would say they didn't need the report to tell them what was wrong.
But now we have it, right? Now we have the report with recommended changes spelled out, 36 of them in all. We're going to talk tonight about what has already been implemented, and most importantly, what is most immediately needed, although we know none of it will happen overnight. We are going to save time for questions from our audience after Joy and I ask a few questions of the panel. We have a lot of ground to cover. When we do audience questions, just so you know, we are going to bring everybody. You're going to see a tape spot up here. We're going to bring you all up here, and Joy and I will have a microphone so everybody would come forward, just to give you a little bit of procedural. But we're going to get to that in just a few minutes.
So as we get started, we want to make sure that we have created a space to talk and to listen, even when we disagree. I hope we can all agree on that tonight. Now to members of our panel. Mayor Craig Greenberg, and I do want to mention members of his senior team are in the audience with us, along with Metro Councilwoman Paula McCraney. Thank you so much for being here. Interim LMPD Chief Jackie Gwen Villaroel is one of our panelists. We also have Brandon Lincoln, the Vice President of the River City FOP, and Dr. Raymond Burse with the NAACP Louisville branch. President Raul Cunningham will be joining us soon, and of course we thank
Stuck in traffic.
He's stuck in traffic, but we thank him for his tremendous work to the community.
Some other folks who are in the audience tonight: Lyndon Pryor with Louisville Urban League, Felicia Newman, also with Louisville Urban League. Members of the Civilian Review Board are in the audience. Edward Harness, if we could have you raise your hand over there. Louisville's Inspector General, who works alongside the Civilian Review Board to create more oversight and transparency with LMPD. We'll talk about some of the changes already implemented before the DOJ report. Dr. Kevin Cosby is also over there as well. We're not sure, but we think this might be an unprecedented panel, that with the mayor, the police chief, the FOP, and a civil rights organization on the panel. I can't completely confirm that, but we thought several people have said that tonight, so that's just something good to know. We want to start with that consent decree that the city and the police department have agreed to in principle to negotiate with the DOJ. That decree would spell out steps that would be taken by the city and the police department to improve things. So Mayor, we're going to start with you. You've inherited a lot. Let's talk about what is a consent decree, and do you support it?
So, yes, I do support it. What's happened right now is that the United States Department of Justice, as you all know, has issued their report. That is a findings of fact from their perspective. What we have signed as a city is we signed an agreement in principle, which is a very short document where we as a city chose not to fight their findings, not to fight their conclusions, but to work collaboratively with the Department of Justice towards a consent decree. A consent decree will be a legally binding document overseen by a federal judge that will spell out actions the city will take to address reforms and improvement in its police department. We had an option. Even before I had read what the findings were, we agreed to, with the DOJ, to work with them as opposed to fighting them.
Let me ask you a quick question. So you've signed an agreement in principle. Is that the same thing as signing a consent decree? No,
that's
now
very
you
different.
negotiate
An agreement
that.
in principle is basically just an agreement to work in good faith, that they will work in good faith, we will work in good faith towards a consent decree. A consent decree, the agreement in principle might have been 2, 3, 4 pages long. It was very short. A consent decree will be significantly larger, and it will spell out specific actions that the city will take. That we've heard from the DOJ. They've done this in other cities across the country. They have advised us in all likelihood this is a 4 to 6 month plus process. They drive the timing of when that happens. We certainly are in close contact with the Department of Justice, but they drive the timeline. We are ready to work as rapidly as possible in collaboration with the Department of Justice to make that happen. So just in terms of managing expectations on timing. The DOJ has notified us that the next step in the process before we even start drafting the consent decree is that the week of April 10th, members of the Department of Justice will be in town, and they're going to host community forums as well, where the Department of Justice will be reaching out to the community. They will be controlling these meetings where they will invite people to provide them with input and feedback on the report and other things that are happening in Louisville. So that's the next step in the process towards a consent decree the week of April 10th.
Perfect.
So, Chief, what are your thoughts on the decree and the independent monitor that will oversee it once it is in place?
So, first of all, thank you for allowing me to be here. So with the consent decree, I look at it as an opportunity for change, an opportunity to grow the department and to move forward with necessary training, necessary review of our processes and practices and policies. I look at it as an opportunity, and with that opportunity comes with the commitment for the department to make those necessary changes as we continue to hear from the community, as we are being proactive already in the space that we're in, but making sure that we understand what we are bound legally to do by the federal courts, and to make sure that we're meeting the benchmarks on that. And any adjustments that need to be made, then they'll be made. And with the monitor being in place, that person, whoever the person is, will be able to see what we're doing, give that guidance necessary. But I'm hopeful that along the process, we'll be doing what is necessary to be done. So again, I am not in fear of the consent decree. I'm looking at it as an opportunity for LMPD to be one of the best departments in the nation. And by that, the consent decree will help us get into that space as we're doing the work. And so that's what I see it as being at this moment.
And that oversight could be years, as it has been in Seattle, which has been under decrees since 2012. So, Mayor, that came with a price tag of $100 million. Can the city fund that? And what is cut in order to do that?
I don't think we need to make cuts. What we need to do is we need to focus our investments in reforms and improvements to LMPD to ensure that we have constitutional and effective policing, that we have a police department that is focused on community policing, working with members of neighborhood, clergy leaders, formerly incarcerated individuals, small business owners, anyone who wants to be a part of the solution to help reduce gun violence and violence crime. We need to ensure that we have the training in place so that our police officers are trained on de-escalation initiatives. And as the world changes, training needs to change so that everyone has trust in the police department, which we acknowledge is not the case right now. The way we'll do that is through building relationships with community members and We need to invest in, one of the things in the Department of Justice report, for example, talked about flaws in the process for issuing search warrants. We need to invest in that process so that those issues that happened in the past are not made again as search warrants are issued moving forward. So Louisville is a growing city. I believe our best days are ahead of us. I believe our tax base is going to grow. And I believe there is room in the city budget to invest not just in LMPD, because we cannot simply police our way to safety. This is not just about investing in the police. This is about investing in our community. So we need to invest more in mental health resources. We need to invest more in parks. We need to invest more in expanded community center hours and programs. We need to invest more in grocery stores in low-income communities. We need to invest more in our HBCU, Simmons College. Those are the types of community investments that we need to make alongside of also investing in a reformed and improved police department.
Brandon Lincoln with the River City FOP. Your organization issued a statement after the DOJ report and thought there should be some challenges to that report. Have you taken a closer look, and are you all still wanting to challenge certain reports of the DOJ?
Thank you for letting us have a seat at the table here, or at the chair, and to engage with the community and the members of this panel. I want to say first and foremost that the men and women that are currently employed with the Louisville Metro Police Department strive every day to go out and help protect this community, and they love the community that they serve. Second, to your question, to your point, there are several things that we agree with, and there are several things that we would find would be worthy of a challenge. One of them being the search warrant aspect, talking about not enough probable cause in a majority of our warrants. I would say that the process could always be handled enhanced. And I think some of those policies and procedures are going to be coming down if they haven't already been laid out. But what I mean by that is a judge reviewed the affidavit and the search warrant that was presented to them by the officer. The judge saw fit that there was enough probable cause for that signature of that judge to go on that document. So what I would challenge is if there was an issue with probable cause, the judge at that moment should have asked further questions, or had the officer or detective, the member who wrote the warrant, go back and enhance or explain in further detail by that aspect.
I know they've changed some procedures already, though, with the judges, that it's going to be a bigger pool. It's going to be random, because the DOJ report was very critical of that as well. I guess what I want to get at with the FOP, you all are challenging parts of the report. We just heard Chief talk about the fact that they see this as an opportunity. Is the FOP on the same page as the police chief? And I would ask you both of that. And if you're not, how do we go forward?
We are in support of changes that are needed to be made to make our officers better. That's through training, that's through mental wellness, that we are laid out, the programs that we are bringing out now, the changes we're making to the search warrant process, whether it's having another layer of oversight, adding another layer with LMPD, having someone overview the warrant prior to even contacting a judge. In addition to that, the wellness program that was built and has since come out is going to help officers not only be the most physically fit, but mentally fit. In addition to that, I believe that we're on the same page as far as the training, the request for enhanced training.
But the overall report with the DOJ, your reaction to it, the FOP's reaction?
I mean, it is a shock. So I work boots on the ground. I'm currently employed with LMPD. I work with the men and women who put the uniform on every day. And I don't see some of the things that the DOJ is saying. Now, I wasn't privy to the information that they were able to go back and look at from, I believe, 2016 to 2021. So some of those things I would look forward to try to get into the further detail of those instances that they're referring to.
Let me ask one quick question, and then we'll go to Dr. Burse. So if the mayor and the police chief, they say, we're going to sign this decree, is the FOP on board?
We would love to have a seat at that table to talk with them and work with them.
Does that happen, Mayor? I don't know. I don't know how it works.
The negotiations regarding the Department of Justice will be between our administration and the Department of Justice. Those will be the people involved.
But you
in that.
oversee the police department. So they will, I guess my point is, doesn't sound like we're all on the same page. That's where my strife is.
I don't know if we are or aren't. What I do know is that we're planning to move forward with a consent decree. The Department of Justice is going to have community input. My understanding is that they're also going to be reaching out to members of the FOP, members of the command staff. The Department of Justice will get input from members of LMPD as well, just as we're willing to take input from FOP, from members of the community. And then my colleagues and I will make the decision as to what we are willing to agree to on behalf of the city.
Okay, and then I know Dr. Burse is, he's
Dr.
wanting to jump in.
Burse,
Joy, go ahead.
Did you want to weigh in on anything the FOP said?
Well, let me say on the day of the DOJ press conference and the review, first seeing the statement from the FOP was disappointing. Disappointing in that there were facts, evidence that DOJ presented, and even as late as this evening, they're questioning some of those facts and some of the things that have taken place. Part of the ability to build a relationship in the community is based on building trust. You have to have trust. And when we hear statements like we just heard a few minutes ago, we really question whether or not that trust takes place. And when we talk about the judicial system, it is unforgivable what those judges, the 6 in particular, did in the warrant process. It's a flawed process. And to say that those were warrants demonstrated probable cause when they use the same boilerplate language from warrant request to warrant request and spent sometimes less than 5 minutes with a judge to get it signed, it is unbelievable. So I think if this community is going to go forward, we have to have a new commitment, a new dedication that involves every individual, every group, every organization at the table. And it has to be open and transparent. Cannot be done behind closed doors.
Brandon, Lincoln, would you like to respond at all? Your thoughts on what he just said?
Absolutely. We are all for transparency.
That's a question we're coming to.
We are all for transparency as it relates to doing the job. We are not trying to protect any bad entity or actor in any way. If someone makes a mistake, they need to be held accountable. We totally agree with that. What I'm saying is, based on the report, yes, there are facts laid out in there,
Yes.
but I would like further information to be able to say that Officer X or Detective X
And I think the rest of the communities are waiting for that. We'd like to know the names of the individual officers who were there. We'd like to know the name of the judges who were involved. Because only when you have light on the situation can you begin to change and begin to correct it. And it's absolutely essential in terms of where we're going forward. I still go back to the fact that things that individuals in this community saw, incidents, many of them are recorded in this report. Many of them the NAACP was involved in and reported, took place. And we knew there were constitutional violations, and what we got back was, this is fine, this is just standard procedure. The reality is, it's not standard procedure. We've got to change something. We keep talking about a few bad apples. There's a few bad apples, but those apples fall from a tree. So what is wrong with the tree? And we got to begin to change some things to make certain that we can do the kind of thing and build the kind of community that we want.
Are we all on the same page on that?
Can I just add something to what Dr. Burse just said is the chief and I took our jobs, started our new positions on January 2nd. We knew we would be inheriting challenges. We didn't know the full extent of them. We are firmly committed to embracing those reforms that you're talking about, to addressing the trees, to building on reforms and improvement so that what happened in the past doesn't happen again in the future. And also to your, I just think it would be helpful, you raised the issue about some of the incidents that are reflected in the report. We have asked the Department of Justice to provide us with information regarding all of the details for all of the incidents in the report. They are in the process of providing that to us, and we are going to release all of that information publicly to the community. We believe as we move towards improved transparency, that's critically important, and we're working with LMPD to get that information together, and that will be released publicly.
When you say that, is that the names of officers?
I believe it will include the names.
Okay, so that question's answered. I wasn't sure. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that correctly.
We
So
will
those
release-
officers' names, when you said names, they will be.
Information that we have, we will release.
Is that, okay.
So Dr. Birch, just to circle back to you, I want to get your thoughts on the consent decree and the way forward. I know there are many facets to this report, but if you had to narrow it down on the most important things moving forward, what would it be?
You know, there's so many things in this report that you would want to deal with. You know, the process for officer accountability, what that process is. Because the FOP has lobbied state legislature and gotten policeman Bill of Rights, and how the contract is negotiated, it actually ends up being a hindrance to having accountability within the system. So the question is, how do we change the process for more accountability to bring it about? I would hope that in the consent decree, there's something in there more substantive along those lines in terms of where we are and what we can in fact do. You know, I can tell you that when DOJ was here before investigating and doing things, one of the things that we asked them for was, in the consent decrees you've done across the country, what have you been able to do or have occur where there was an FOP in place in those states? And the answer was, we haven't been able to be very successful at all. So it's incumbent on us in this community, Mr. Mayor, that as a part of the contract negotiation, that the light be let in and the community is involved so the community will understand in detail what the accountability process is, how it will be measured, and who will in fact enforce it. That to me is a very big one, because if there's accountability and you got a bad apple who acts, then you have some consequences for it.
Mayor, what's your reaction to that?
Several reactions. First, we're already taking action towards those goals that you just outlined, which I know the chief and I both share. We, working with Mr. Harness in the Office of Inspector General, we were able to agree to a memorandum of understanding that where the chief has agreed to direct officers that they are required to comply with requests for interviews and information from the Office of Inspector General, and that LMPD will make body camera footage directly available to Mr. Harness and his office. So that is one big step forward on one of the issues that you raised. Also, we have consulted with the DOJ on their suggested remedial measures. When we talk about the reforms and improvements that we are seeking to make to improve training, to improve the warrant process, to improve all of these things or common goals that we share, none of the recommended measures in the Department of Justice report require changes to the collective bargaining agreement. These are things that we as the administration, that the chief is the leader of LMPD, that we can implement on their own. Now, some of them take funding. We'll be working with our partners on Metro Council to seek funding for some of the initiatives to implement these reforms, but they do not require changes to the collective bargaining agreement.
All right, you good there? All right. We're focusing on the changes that have already been made before the DOJ report came out, some of them coming from the Civilian Review Board and the Office of Inspector General. Since he brought up Ed Harness, why don't we get Ed over into the box? Joy, I know you have a couple of questions that put to him. I'm going to take my mic over there because I know you wanted to direct some things right to him.
Yes. So as we're getting the microphone to Ed Harness, there have also been some complaints by the Inspector General that in the past, getting access to improve accountability is tough. Ed, we would like to hear from you, of course, on what your hope is with this new administration.
Well, first off, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. We have made some great strides under the new administration. Previously, some of the agreements we sought sat at the chief's desk. But since the new administration, as the mayor stated, we have reached an agreement, an MOU, for cooperation of LMPD personnel and to allow for direct access by our office into the body camera videos without having to ask permission for a file. We will be able to have direct access to a lapel video related to any of our investigations, so we can view that at the source. So there's no questions about redactions or anything else. We'll be able to view that at the source. So we entered that agreement on the 13th of February. We had a joint announcement on the 14th. And just in the last couple of days, our investigators are issuing notices to LMPD personnel, and we'll be doing interviews within the next couple of weeks. And we'll also be going through the required background check so that the authorized personnel can have direct access to evidence.com for the body cameras.
Go ahead.
So at this present moment, you are satisfied with your relationship to the administration and LMPD and what you were able to accomplish with these powers that have now been granted?
Yes, it's moving forward. There are certainly other questions that we will have as we move forward in this process because, no ordinance is perfect, and we will have
Did you want to
other.
respond to that subpoena power?
The subpoena power issue is at the state legislature. I believe that the consent decree will probably address subpoena power for our organization, but that's just my opinion. But as we work through these issues, there are other questions. So one question is, will the FOP grieve a decision from our agency that discipline should be given to an officer for a violation? Can the chief rely on our investigation, or does the chief have to initiate a second investigation? And these are questions that we will have to face as we go down the road.
Is that anything we can address tonight? I don't know.
No.
Okay.
But also, too, let me say this, because when I took my new position in January 2nd of this year, I took it upon myself because there was this outward expression of delay from the department working with OIG. I reached out to Ed Harness and called for a meeting in order for us to get on the same page and for us to work together and for us to move forward with coming together and having the meeting of the minds. I took it upon myself to do that because I felt that it was necessary for it to be transparent, and we've heard the community. I heard the community. So I want to be very clear that it was when I took my position, I made sure that was top of mind. So I'm sitting here tonight because I heard the community and I knew that that was a component that needed to be addressed. And I did that. Not only was I in the meeting with Ed Harness, I had my whole executive team there because I really wanted to make sure that it wasn't only just me speaking, that we were on the same page, that we had one voice in that room so that we could move forward. And then we were able to navigate and to get to an MOU. So I really want to just put that out there, that that is a part of the process of making sure that different entities that have their positions, that we are respecting their position as I'm doing my job. But I wanted to make sure you all understood that I did that in order to, I understood the necessary and how necessary it was and how important it was for us as an agency to move forward.
Dr. Bursch, I can tell you want to weigh in.
Let me raise a question about subpoena power. In the old city of Louisville, there was subpoena power for that public review. In the merger, it was in fact eliminated. Now, the NAACP and every organization in this community has called on getting subpoena power. It requires a legislative change. Now, during the last session of the legislature, that was being debated. They got mixed messages from the city of Louisville as it relates to subpoena power. The community was advocating for it. There were reports that the administration itself was not in favor of giving that body subpoena power. So I would ask the mayor tonight, is he willing to wade in and fight during the next General Assembly session to get subpoena power?
We'll definitely consider that. To be totally candid, I have been focused on reforms and improvements that we can make under state law right now, and that's been our area of focus.
All right, so we're going to move on. Chief, you are kind of opened up this segue to our next question. Transparency and accountability are key phrases that we hear, but I also want to bring up another word, and that's trust. I'd like each of you to answer, how do you get it back with the public and LMPD? Some folks...
Well, wait, now, we're trying to make this where everybody, we can all disagree. Public is going to be able to ask questions here, I promise you. We've got at least 30 minutes, more than that, for you all to line up and ask questions. But we definitely want to just keep this respectful, and we know there are going to be disagreements. We absolutely understand that. That's why we wanted to have everybody here present to be able to speak their mind, to ask questions, and everybody is going to have that chance. Okay? Are we all good with that? All right.
All right. So some folks told us that they weren't going to come tonight because there is no trust. Mayor, we'll start with you. How do you get it back?
I think in several ways. One is through meetings like this, to actually have the opportunity to interact. As you just said, Rachel, we might not agree on every issue, but we have to build relationships. We have to build relationships between everyone on LMPD and the community that they serve. Everyone in my administration, everyone in Metro government and the community that they serve. Trust is built through relationships when you know people, and that's a two-way street. And so we need to do a better job, and this is our third meeting like this week alone. The chief and I and our teams are committed to meeting with members in the community throughout the entire community as the leaders of these organizations, but it has to be everyone in the organization. And so that's why we're so focused on community policing, on working in communities with people that live in neighborhoods all around our city. It will take time. I understand that, because building trust, given that for so many, trust has been broken, it will take time. We are starting already to try to rebuild that trust.
Chief?
Again, I echo what the mayor is saying, but it starts with me. It starts with me being engaged, me going out and being more involved within the community, and I do that. I'm showing up, I'm being present, having standing meetings. There's never been a standing meeting with the ACLU. That's on my calendar. Met with them last week. That's building trust. That's listening, it's hearing. Urban League, Linda, you were there at the meeting. Our first meeting together and hearing your concerns. That's building community trust. Actually being involved and having my officers to actually be engaged and having conversations, not just running from call to call, but actually stopping and having those organic, free-flowing conversations. Tonight, when I leave here, I'm going to 26th and Broadway because we had 2 murders that took place over there. I got some chaplains that's going to meet me. My community engagement unit is going to meet me over there, and we're going to be in the community and just be there for the people and give away some things, just to show my presence in order to make sure they understand that we are engaging our community. So it's different things like that, and being transparent, allowing the doors to be open to LMPD for everybody to have a conversation, a very organic, truth-telling conversation. That's how we can continue to build community trust.
Brandon Lincoln, FOP.
I would say time. It's going to take a lot of time to fix what has been damaged. I'm not going to say it's happened overnight. It might take years. But like the consent decree is not going to be fast. It'll be here for 5 to 7, 8 years. I believe that's what nationally it looks like. It's also meeting with any and all groups that want to have a seat at the table, have a conversation, whether it be the ACLU, the NAACP, the Urban League, members of the clergy, members of the community. We just need to find a way for y'all to reach out and say, hey, let's meet, let's talk, let's have a conversation. In addition to
Burrs,
that,
have you met the NAACP with the FOP?
No, we have not.
Maybe after this? Yeah?
Oh, we're ready and willing and able to meet, and we'll meet with any group at any time and have the discussion. We're open.
thank you for that. And working with the community with events, partnering with, like we have, with basketball programs, baseball programs, helping the children of our community get involved, which brings the parents out and gets everyone together. And first and foremost, if an officer screws up, holding them accountable swiftly, quickly. Right now, we've asked in previous administrations, you know, we have some of our, whether they're administrative or through our PIU department, through the criminal division, that they take way too long. So if someone screws up, it might take 2 years to get an investigation complete before they realize what their discipline is going to be, whether that's days suspension, whether that's a letter, whether that's additional training. If we could speed that up, we hold them accountable faster. 2 or 3 other things don't happen, it's addressed immediately.
Dr. Burse, you weigh in on that with trust.
Okay, you know, the NAACP on March 8th, with the same day the DOJ report came out, listed several things that it thought was necessary to, in fact, begin the process for doing it. And number one, we called for transparency by the mayor, LMPD, and the Metro Council in the next steps of implementation of the consent of the process. That means negotiating the consent decree. It has to be an open process where we in the community are engaged or involved. We have to open the FOP contract negotiations up. If you're going to build trust, you've got to start in terms of the things that you say you're going to do, you have to do and deliver on. And I'll just give you an example of where it was not. With the previous chief, we were brought into a meeting and asked to say, what would we like to see in the next chief? They had group meetings all across the community. And then they said, at the end of this process, we're going to do a job description and we will share that with the community. That was it. And then they said, when we got down to the final candidates, we will bring some community folks in to be involved. The reality was that on that January morning, on a Sunday evening, there was on the newscast that a new chief had been appointed, and no input at all had gotten back to any people in the community. You build trust by doing the things that you say you're going to do and doing them. You know, to me, for me personally, the FOP contract is the major issue with me in terms of building trust.
So, Mayor, let me ask you, you're hearing that about a seat at the table, community input. Your reaction to that, first of all, and then the FOP contract keeps coming up. Those negotiations, has a decision been made about those?
We have been accepting community input since we took office. We have had several different meetings. We've had written reports submitted by many different organizations, and that input is impacting our approach to the negotiations. Some of the input that we've had, we disagree with. Some we agree with. I'll give you some examples. There has been suggestions that we've got received in writing from community groups regarding some of the things we've already talked about, the Office of Inspector General. We did that without even needing to go through the collective bargaining agreement. We took action. There's been feedback about retaining records for longer periods of time. We agree with that. That will be something that when we begin discussions on the contract, we will be advocating for. There was something about working to help more officers live in the communities they serve. We agree with that. We will be pushing for more incentives to encourage LMPD officers to live in Louisville. There was encouragement to ensure that every citizen complaint was looked at and reviewed. We agree with that. We agree that all MOUs to the collective bargaining agreement should be made public. Those are things that we agree with. There are a few things that we don't agree with. One of them has been a request that right now there's a provision in the LMPD contract that says the city will not lay off any kind of mass layoff of police officers. There's a request to remove that provision. We might disagree, but our view is that right now we actually need more police officers so that we have the resources to work in the community to implement the community policing that we've been talking about and that I believe the overwhelming majority of Louisvillians want. And so we don't think that's a necessary provision to change. To me, I think it's important that we accept that feedback and we be honest about where we agree and where we disagree, and we'll have that dialogue as we continue to receive feedback from the community.
All right, I know we want to get to Lyndon Pryor. You're going to ask that question, and I'm going to go over there with the microphone.
All right, so Lyndon Pryor is here with the Louisville Urban League. Your organization had a news conference spelling out several priorities, recommendations that have been made several times. Please just give us 2 or 3 of those recommendations that you believe are most important.
So that's a very hard thing to do, Joy. There are a lot of things. But I will start with where I think we focus a lot on, and that is public participation. And I just want to stress the point, and I made this to you directly, Mr. Mayor. Public input is not the same as public participation, right? Public feedback is not the same as public participation. So when we talk about public involvement and engagement in the FOP contract negotiations, that is having impacted individuals and advocates at the table to be a voice for this community and for the things that we believe are important to us in changing this. And it cannot be underscored enough. Dr. Burris has said it, and we all believe it and know it. The things in the DOJ's report are absolutely reflective of what is and is not in the contract with the police union. And those things have to change. It has to be a priority. And so we are going to continue to push on that, because if we cannot do that, if we cannot set ground rules for what is accountability, how these things are going to work, then any type of reform or really change that you hope to implement is going to be void, because you get to always, the police will always get to come back to a document that allows them to do behavior that we know is inconsistent with what the community wants. And so you start there, and that is always going to be a critical point for everyone in all of this. Everything grows out of that. And so we really, really insist and demand, honestly, that public participation be a priority in all of this. We are not here and we are not interested, to be quite honest, and I feel very confident in saying this, in reforming this system. It needs to be transformed. This system has to be transformed. What we are doing is not adequate. There's no way that you can read those 90 pages and feel like we are going to somehow dabble around the edges and get to a good space.
Let's let them weigh in on that, because I think that's a good stopping point to weigh in your all's reaction to what Lyndon just said.
Can we start with Brandon? What's your reaction?
To what he said? So I think that we definitely need to sit down and have some conversations on what you're looking for as far as additional accountability. I think that's important. I think that at the end of the day, the police here, again, want to live in this community. They want to protect the community. They want to serve the community that they live within. And we select 10 members of our department, of our FOP, to be on the panel to negotiate the contract with the city. If we allowed 400 or 500 of those members to come into the negotiations, you would have 100, 200 different ideals. So trying to collectively come together and put together a product, a work product, would be very difficult.
So in all due respect, this wasn't about who sits on the FOP side. This is
I
a point to the
understand.
mayor and who sits on his side.
I
Because
agree.
he was elected by the people.
Yes, he was.
And so he represents the public, and so the public should have a seat at the table. So you can have 10, you can have 20, I don't care how many people the
So
FOP
let's have
puts
the
in.
mayor respond to that then. Let's have the mayor to respond to that. Thank you, Lyndon.
I hear that loud and clear. We have a difference of opinion on this. There also is state law that uniquely governs how a collective bargaining agreement between a police organization and a city government is governed. And so that law, we believe we are following. And just like the issue of subpoena power, we believe this is a state law issue. And so that is something for us to look at before the next General Assembly
So let me
next year.
ask the one thing, though, that I think that Lyndon brought up with the FOP. And Dr. Burst, you said NAACP hasn't met with the FOP. Has Louisville Urban League? Is that, I guess I'm advocating, isn't that something that should be happening? Am I crazy?
There's a negotiation table where these negotiations are going to happen. And so we can meet, and that's fine. Some of what we have talked about and some of what is happening is what many of us would call performative, right? And here's the thing, let me say this. Performance is not a bad thing. I am actually a believer that sometimes performance is necessary. However, performance without substance is absolutely worthless, right? And so we have to do both and. And so we are willing to meet and talk and negotiate and all of those sorts of things. But if those things don't make it inside the room where the decisions are made about the contract, then the meetings were not on point. Mr. Mayor, you said that this is a legislative issue. What we would like to know, and again, my team, of which I have lawyers on, we've looked at the state contract. There's nothing that says who can be in the room on your side. And so if you can find a statute that says that tells us that you can't have public people in there, please let us know, because we haven't been able to find it. There's nothing that says how many people you can have, who those people need to be, who those people need to work for. And so we need to know if that's what you're going to use, we want to know where exactly that's coming from, because I don't know that we've ever seen it.
Let's let him respond.
I will, the attorneys that have given me that advice, I'd be more than happy to have them call. We'll talk tomorrow, Lyndon, if you want.
No, let's listen to what the mayor says. We really need to hear it.
Okay? But look, here's what I'm
Statute does
telling you all.
not specify who is in the room. It does not.
My chief of staff and general counsel, our director of equity, the chief negotiator that's going to be involved in the room, they have had multiple meetings with many community groups, including community groups that actively say they are advocating for a police-free state. We are still listening to those individuals and their concerns. I am telling you openly the areas that we agree with the concerns we've been provided with, and I'm being transparent about the areas where we disagree. So I think the fact that we disagree, I understand that might be frustrating, but we are being candid about what the position is, what we believe our legal guidance is, and I want to just continue to engage in the conversations with you and other community members to make continued improvements.
Obviously, this is a very big sticking point that we're not going to solve tonight, but I think that we have to realize
But Rachel,
that...
one other thing, sorry to interrupt, but one other thing that I just want to reiterate something that I've said. We have talked to the United States Department of Justice, the officials that wrote the report and that came in here and provided the report. They have told us that none of their remedial recommendations require any changes to the collective bargaining agreement. We can do this in agreement between the Department of Justice and our administration and the leadership of LMPD. We can implement these changes even before we have that consent decree, which we have started to do. That is going to be our focus.
All right, I know we wanted to talk to Shamika, if you want to come up, impacted members of the community. So one thing that we're trying to do, and you and I talked last night or night before, I said, I want you to come up and you tell me what is the main thing moving forward, because we want this to be focused on the way forward. Obviously, we have a long way to go. But the most important thing that you see that could be done to regain some of that trust, to move us forward as a city.
I'm thankful. Good evening, everyone. But I'm thankful that Dr. Burse is here. Dr. Burse and Lyndon have outlined a lot of the things that were important to me, and I don't want to repeat what they've said, but I do want to say a simple Google search, because I'm all about keeping things simple and what's tangible. We're good at talking about what we can't do, but what we need to talk about is what you can do. And not just because of the consent decree, LMPD has proven that they are not able to police themselves. And anything that removes us from that is a path forward. But I know you need ways to do that. So one of the things that I think is really important, as it's been spoken before, there's been other reports. In 2016, there was a report that resulted in a lot of our clergy and faith leaders being trained to be a part of riding along or being a part of the things that you all are doing. Over 100 of them were trained, but none of them have been, is anybody, I don't know if any of them in here, but none of them have been allowed to do that. So
let's stop there. Let's just go with one, because then I want to get the audience up here to ask questions. So, are you familiar with that? And I guess.
No, I'm not familiar with that, but it sounds very interesting. I'd like to learn more.
Will you make sure that.
oh, yes.
Okay. Now, what I'd like to do is audience questions. We really want to get to those. If you have one, we're going to have you line up over here. No, I'm going to have her do one other. You stay right here, Shamika. But we're going to have, if you just come right up here, we're going to form a line. Let's not do more than 10 people at a time. We're going to have you keep your questions. We got to get to them quickly. 30 seconds to get your question, okay? We understand a lot of energy here, and a lot of disappointment, but we want to get to questions as soon as possible. Shamika, one more thing, and then we're going to open it up to the public.
All right, I appreciate this, Rachel. The next thing is we have talked about how we respond to trauma, and I will tell you, as an activist and an organizer, I have many labels, but those are the main labels. We were treated as enemies of the state. We have not seen accountability for those officers who have treated us that way. I'm a part of a lawsuit because I was arrested and given a boilerplate description and lied on. And so we don't have any trust when it comes to being an activist and an organizer. It's very dangerous. It's very scary. What are you doing to teach your officers better training on how they respond to protesters and activists who are standing up for their rights against your injustices?
Thank you, Shamika. All right, Chief?
Yes. First of all, our recruits and our officers must always understand the law and understand that there is freedom of speech and people have a right to peacefully protest. That has to be very, very clear. And also, too, when we are training our officers, I'm a big component of training because, again, I was a training director, so I get it. We can't get into a space, we can't be in a space where we're training just to check a box. We got to make sure that the officers understand what they're being trained. So that comes with another level of accountability, even on the instructors, how we're training and teaching our officers and what the results that we want to yield from that session. But also doing those refreshers. We're doing that. We're actually making sure that our officers understand what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. That comes with being very involved as to what our officers are doing and supervisors being supervisors, period, and having the right supervisors in place. So we'll see those changes taking place, and they're already taking place. But I hear you, but it comes in the training academy, it comes with having the right supervisors, making sure they're in place and they're seeing what their officers are doing and hold those individuals accountable. And guess what, not just stop there with the officers, because sometimes we have leadership who is failing the officers. Now we have to address that. That wasn't being done. And so now you will see that change. So yes, ma'am.
Can you define the terms when it comes to rioting? Those things we were mislabeled, and many of us received charges we should not have received. So I get that training is going to be instituted, but what's going to happen tomorrow if people protest? Are you going to apply things that will make, so we can stand for our given rights to protest?
So,
Thank you.
and again, there have been protests that have taken place, and you didn't even see any engagement from us because, again, it was peaceful. It was done in a manner that didn't cause any disruption to the city, wasn't blocking or impeding any traffic, but also, too, I even spoke to those leaders of the protest. Give me information. Where are you going? What is your route? And again, we have Lieutenant Colonel Steve Healy here, who is very on-the-grounds individual and actually having those conversations. And again, if something goes awry, then we need to address that and say, can you not do X, Y, and Z, or this is violation of the law. And it's come with direct communication. And again, I was not, as you all know, I wasn't here in 2020. I wasn't. But moving forward, you'll have a better response as to how we even engage you as you're peacefully and have the right to protest and to state your position on what you feel is an injustice or what the changes that you want to see.
Joy?
And just for the viewing audience at home, and of course members here with us today, would you state your name and the organization that you're with, and of course share the input?
My name is Felicia Newman. I'm the Director of Policy of the Louisville Urban League. And I got to give a little preface to my question, and I want Brandon to listen very closely. I used to be a prosecutor, a Commonwealth's attorney, okay? And as a part of our training, we had to do ride-alongs. I did a ride-along with an officer, a uniformed officer, in the evening, sat in the car with him. We patrolled the West End. We went to a particular project that is actually still there. Hasn't been torn down and made new apartments yet. This man, while I'm sitting in the car looking exactly as I look, called the community members savages while I was sitting in the car. Felt completely okay with it. And later on that evening, when we pulled over a car for some pathetic traffic stop, he found drugs in the car. I was a narcotics prosecutor, and I expected him to do the thing that he's supposed to do, which is arrest everybody in the car. That's just how it goes. You arrest everybody because you don't know whose drugs they are. The only person that got arrested was the Hispanic male. The white female and the white male got to drive away. Okay? So when you talk about training, can your officers be trained out of their bias? Because I don't think they can
all right,
be.
Let's let him answer.
Well, obviously I'm not familiar with that particular instance where you did a ride-along,
But just implicit bias in general.
right, implicit bias, it takes training. It takes working with the community, living in the community, being one with the community. Our officers should have never called someone a savage. Even if they're a criminal, they still need to be treated like a human.
They're not criminals. They're not criminals.
Talking about
They
the,
were in the community.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Listen,
No.
I have to say this.
All right, but we've got to get to, okay.
See, that's what's the problem.
Go ahead.
That's the problem. That is the problem. They were in their own community, outside on a summer day, having fun, being rowdy. Who cares? There was no guns. There was children. There were teenagers. They were not criminals. They were citizens of Louisville who were being harassed for being outside. So that's the training that needs to happen in LMPD. You don't see every community member. Your officers can't even sit with the people in the audience. They're over here, and I don't. Maybe they have their guns on them. Maybe they can take them off, but they're not even sitting out here with these people. So that's what they need training on.
Ms. Rachel, can I respond to that?
Yes. Now let's let him respond.
I was referencing that no one should be called a savage, and even if you are a criminal, not referencing the person that was called a savage, even if you are a criminal, you still deserve to be treated like a human being, okay? People make mistakes every day, whether you do what we do, whether you're a doctor, it doesn't matter. People make mistakes every day. That's what I was referencing.
Chief, did you want to weigh in at all?
I wanted to speak to my executive team. I asked them to come with me today, and they're standing over there because we just had an officer to die and just passed away not too long ago. So I'm actually telling them, again, if you need to leave, just into the family or whatever you need to do, then by all means, leave. That is the reason why they're over there.
Thank you for that clarification. Let's bring up the next community member, and I do want to say let's get to these questions quickly because we have a very long line, okay?
First, I want to say my name is Tammy Hawkins. I represent District 1. I sit on Metro Council. The second thing that I would like to say before I get on to my question, and it will be quick, is that I don't know who coordinated this meeting, but I will say it's on a Wednesday night, and that's when pastors are at church. And I don't see a lot of people that look like me in this room. And it will probably be filled more if you would probably look into not having it on a Wednesday night at 6 or 7 o'clock when people
Part of it was the day we could get everybody here.
Let's
Okay.
not make sure that it's not by design. That's the first thing.
I can
Wednesday
tell you
nights
it
aren't
wasn't.
good. Okay,
I can vouch for that.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Now we got that. But my question is, I work hand in hand, and I understand that Mayor Greenberg, Chief, have a lot of respect for you guys. We work hand in hand. I think as far as trust and transparency, the only way that people that are even gonna begin to try to give you guys a chance, and I say this wholeheartedly, is those names gotta be released. That's where it starts. And just touching on that with the guy from FOP, what's your name?
Brandon.
Brandon, okay, Brandon, you touched on a few key words that stuck with me. One of them was mistake. To me, officers don't get a chance to make mistakes. They're supposed to protect and serve. Citizens, we didn't get a chance to make mistakes. It's not too many of us that was able to be given a second chance. I'm one of them second chances. So I understand. I understand exactly how so many of these people feels. So until you sit in that seat, you won't understand. So what I would say is you hung on mental health. I don't want to hear the excuse about mental health when it comes to these officers. Because so many of us, so many people, we've been fighting mental health for a very long time. And y'all lock us up for mental health. People with mental health issues. So I'm saying that to say, let's not use that as an excuse for officers' mental health. It's everywhere. but we don't expect for our officers to have it. So how would you attack that?
Thank you.
That's what they're doing. The department has actually opened up the wellness program. And with the wellness program comes being able to go and speak to counselors, doctors, psychiatrists, whatever that may be. If an officer is having a issue at home, whether a child gets sick, a spouse, significant other passes away, tragic events that we see out on the streets, whether we're helping the community and something bad happens, things like that, where we can go and have a place to reach out and talk and converse with somebody that can walk us through the steps of what they call PTSD or a traumatic event to help us be better so that when we are out in the community, we're the strongest mentally and physically to help you guys, the
Anybody else
community.
want to weigh in? Thank you for your question, and I'm going to go on to the next.
The only thing I
Joy,
did
you
want to
wanna-
add is to Councilwoman Hawkins is you asked the question about releasing the names. We're in the process of getting that information from the Department of Justice, getting it all together. All of that will be released publicly.
Thank you. Would you introduce yourself?
Yes. My name is April Hearn, APRILEHEARN, and I am here representing an organization called Breeway. I'm sure you've heard of us. And what I want to say is that we've been at the tables with you all or in rooms with y'all before, right? And we've heard the same things over and over and over. And so what I have to say is for you, Craig, Jackie, and Brandon, it's very redundant. It's very redundant to continue hearing words like transparency, trainings, and trust, but we're not getting it. We're not seeing it. And I understand that you all just got in office, but before I go to a job, I research what it is that I am about to get into, and I make sure that my first day on the job, I'm there to make a change, whatever that has to look like. Okay, and so instead of hearing those words over and over again, stop feeding that to us. We want to hear more words like consequences. We want to hear words like charges and indictments. We want to hear words like reparations, Craig. Those are the words that we need to hear. Because if you are not talking about restoring our community, you're talking about mental health for officers. But what about our mental health? What about our mental health? You're talking about officers having to stand over there because they lost a officer today. But what about the people that we have lost and y'all have not held nobody accountable for it? And we still continue to have to show up and have these type of conversations. Brandon, you said that you didn't see what the DOJ see, correct? You don't see it.
The individual cases.
You don't see it. Hold on, Joy. You don't see what the DOJ see. Maybe it's because your job, the FOP, y'all are the ones that create the loopholes so that these officers can go out here and kill people like Breonna Taylor, can go out here and kill people like David McAtee, and y'all make sure that they go on administrative leave with pay. It's y'all's job. And Jackie, I just want to say this and then I'm done. You coming down to 26th Street with your chaplains, it sounds real cute, sis. It sounds real cute. But don't forget, the last time that y'all came and hung out on 26th Street, David McAtee died. We don't forget that. What are y'all gonna do about that?
Let's let them respond. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, wait, okay, wait 1 second. Wait 1 second. Because the chief just said, then we won't go. Is that what we want?
Because no, it is a form of making sure that we are present and that we're doing and that you're able to see some of the changes that we're trying to make within this city. But if that's not accepted, then I respect your feelings on that. I'm not going to argue with that. I accept that. But also too, at another. It's not performance.
All right.
But it's changing what we used to do. And now we're moving forward to make it a difference. You got to give us.
Well, wait a second. We're going to keep going with the questions.
April?
Wait,
At the end of the day,
we've got to let her
it's
answer.
about making those necessary, intentional changes that I know that we need to make. But if it cannot be accepted, I
All right.
understand
No,
that.
no,
Hey,
But I'm-
we've got people in line.
You are performative. You won't even sit here and connect with this black woman. You so I did this.
All
All right, thank you.
Connect with
We've got to go to the
We're going
questions
to try to get
now.
to
All right,
more
let's go.
community questions.
All right,
All right,
come on
listen,
up.
everyone, look, we want to make sure that we are engaging.
But we've got to have a format, or we're not going to have any kind of constructive dialogue. We're just not.
Thank
Well, and you all may feel that way, and I'm so sorry you feel. I really am. But we've got to get to some more audience questions right now.
My name is Cheyenne Oswella. I'm with Ex-Hate Ministries, and I'm a community activist. Over these past few years, I've heard the word accountability thrown around a lot and not seen anything come out of that. I actually haven't really seen any true accountability. In fact, I feel like I've seen the opposite of that. So my question is, what is accountability to you? What is reform? And when these officers' names come out, do you plan to fire these officers? Because they shouldn't be on the force. They shouldn't be in our communities if they're calling black people monkeys or beating people up in the street in broad daylight. So what is your plan when these names do come out? Do they just come out and then we just keep seeing these officers on the street being scared for our lives? Is this officer, I mean, if he did that, is he going to do that to me as well? So that is my question.
Accountability, and what does that look like after these names come out?
Again, we're going to review the report, and those officers who, we don't even know whether or not the officers are still here or not. Again,
I can
we
say
gotta investigate.
Aaron Ambers is still on the force. Corey Galloway is still on the
Investigate all of it
force.
and give everything a review. And that's what we're doing. And again, we want to be transparent, and you will get that information.
Do you
because
have any plan
requested.
to terminate any officers? I'm wondering if that's even on the table. Is
Again,
termination on the
We have to
table?
review all of those
I think the
cases
names have to come out
within
first
that
and-
report. And that would be my statement on
Okay.
that.
Thank you for your question. All right, our next folks,
Kathleen?
and just, if we could just get right to those questions. So we have a lot right here in line. I'd like to get to all these questions if possible.
All right, my name is Kathleen Parks. I'm president of the National Action Network, chapter that was founded in 1991 by the Reverend Al Sharpton. We just completed viewing the documentary of Loudmouth. And it chronicles the life of Reverend Al Sharpton and why he has been classified as a loudmouth in the first place. And I quote that he said, we had to share the things that the politicians and others did not want to hear. That's what's happening today. People are saying things to you as leaders that you don't particularly want to hear, but it's your job to hear and to listen to it.
So what's
I
your
have to
question?
listen. So my question is, dealing with the after effects of slavery, 400 years, and 60 years in this city in particular, of racism, discrimination, structural racism, crime, drugs, you've got a whoopee in your lap. As the new leaders in this city, and also the gentleman here who is the vice president of the FOP, how are you?
Just ask your question. So we
Okay,
can
I'm
get
gonna
to the
ask the
others.
question. What is your plan to understand the historical, cultural ramifications of what these officers do when they come on the job and when they see a descendant of American slaves, a black man or a gay person? How are you going to prepare these officers moving forward? Because it's not going to get any better. Folks are unapologetically tired and are demanding what needs to occur in this city. We don't need words on a document.
So what is your
to tell-
question?
So
they
the
can
question is, do you have a strategy in place right now to deal with the cultural ramifications of why the DOJ document investigation and the consent decree is needed in the first place?
Thank you.
We don't have a strategy in place, no. But what we are willing to do is work with anybody that wants to come to the table and talk and have a conversation to see what we can do to figure this out. We're going to work with the administration on the policy changes, on the training changes, and we're willing to sit at that table.
You feel the frustration in the room.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody up
Yes,
here.
ma'am.
The frustration, the anger, we've done this before, we've been down this road. I mean, is there anything, I mean, you all are brand new to the table, some of you, so I know, but I guess, your thoughts just hearing all of this. I mean, I'm hearing this and going, is there a way forward? I don't know. So answer that quickly, Mayor, and then we'll have our next person to ask a question.
Rachel, just a few things in response to some of those last comments. First, I agree with the Reverend Sharpton. I think it's important for myself, for the chief, for my senior leadership team, for us to listen. I want to listen. It might not be comfortable to listen, but it's important for me to listen. And so everything that every one of you all are saying, that every email that we get, whether we agree or not, it's important that we listen and that we digest it, we think about it, and if we disagree, we come prepared to have a conversation with the individual that's providing that feedback, so at least we can understand where we're each coming from, and maybe through that, we'll either get to a closer place of agreement, maybe one of us will learn something new, we'll see things in a new way, and so it is my job as mayor to listen. It's my job to learn from every one of you all. And so to me, that tonight is very important, even if everything I say you all don't agree with, it is important to me and helpful to me. Also, one thing that just to be aware of is that the administration prior to us began a process called Truth and Transformation, led by the NNC, I think they're out of New York. NNSC. Part of that contract is that researchers at the University of Louisville are conducting a history of policing in Louisville is basically what it's on. That research is being conducted. Our administration has supported the continuance of that, the completion of that, and that's something that will certainly be made public when it's available. And the third thing that I'll just say in response to that and a few other previous comments is when we think about the future of policing, we should be thinking about it in a different way. When we think about recruiting people who are going to be on LMPD, we have great people in this room with very different experiences from people who have historically been on LMPD. Think about applying. Reach out to social workers who encourage social workers to join LMPD. Encourage educators to apply to LMPD. One way that we address some of the challenges is through recruitment and getting a greater diversity of individuals by race, by gender, by sexual orientation, by life experiences. And so I would encourage everyone with complaints, with anger, to join and become part of the solution and change our organization by getting new and more diverse people to be a part of LMPD.
All right, we're going to go and ask questions, but we got to get to questions quickly because I don't think we're going to get to everybody in line here.
So this question is for Mayor Greenberg. We've talked a lot about accountability, but we haven't talked as much about justice. No amount of training and reform is going to change what happens to our communities if there is no justice. And if the police continue to get budgets that increase year after year after year, last year, since you're a new mayor, over $220 million went to the LMPD. More money went to corrections. Do you know how much the external agency fund got for nonprofits to do community work? $8 million. When I put it on a bar graph, the amount of money that goes to the police didn't even show up compared to the amount of money that goes to community. So this is your first year to propose a budget. And I understand that Metro Council, so this is for Metro Council as well, because y'all finalized the budget. But first, the power is in your hands. Are you going to continue to increase LMPD budgets? Because as long as they have that money, they can do whatever they want ultimately. You can train them and they can still do whatever they want with their weapons out in these streets terrorizing us. So are you going to continue to increase the LMPD budget or not?
All right, let's let him respond.
My budget will include increases to address the DOJ reforms and improvements that have been requested for LMPD. It will also include increases to community investments that have nothing to do with policing. And as I mentioned earlier, to invest more in mental health resources, in parks, in community centers, in affordable housing, in HBCUs. All of those things also require more community investment, and our budget will reflect that as well.
Right. Next question, and let's, again, questions quickly.
I got you. I'm Antonio Brown, all of us are none. Breeway, gloves, no guns. All right, so first, I know you inherit a lot. First off, and thank you, because y'all said a lot of my questions. So now I have to say, first off, y'all need to investigate the land bank. So I got a lot of statements. Y'all need to be investigating the land banks. I wish the DOJ was here, because that's one of my questions for the DOJ also. Y'all need to be investigating them. The only way y'all want us to believe in y'all again, fire the police that was in charge. Not just I ain't worried about the foot soldiers. See, when it came to organized crime, y'all go after the boss, right? They said this is organized crime. We just ran organized crime. That's what we was reading. And y'all see nothing wrong with that. Y'all don't think none of these people need to lose their jobs. But if I was doing organized crime, I'd be in jail.
So what's your
question? We saying if y'all ain't gonna lock these cops up, making sure they ain't never put on any kind of badges. Do that. Y'all can do that. But y'all ain't willing to do it because y'all still into white supremacy. And we tired of you telling us how we can get out of y'all chains. That's what we hearing. Because y'all ain't taking nothing out. Like, only thing I kept hearing from my questions was maybe. That's not an answer.
So your
yes
question
or
is,
no. It was, can we have some people at the table when these discussions is happening? We need somebody that's not LMPD, that's not part of this government. People from the community being part of this discussion. Who's on this force? Get rid of the police ahead and let us help get them people back in order.
All right, let's let them, is that in the form of a question about accountability at the top?
Do it. Maybe. Only thing we're hearing all day is maybe. But the whole thing is there's no accountability because y'all said the 2 boys got killed, shot by the police, but it was really 3. And y'all know.
All right.
Y'all be covering this up.
Thank you.
All right.
We're going to move on.
Antonio?
Next question. Wait.
I got a question for you. Why are y'all covering up that y'all shot 3 boys and keep on saying that y'all shot 2 when they was in that stolen car? That's my question.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, here we go. All right, go ahead and say it. All right, all right. I don't know.
I don't know what incident Antonio's referring to.
All right, let's go to our next question right now. All right.
Hey,
All right.
listen, we want to give as many
Antonio,
people
just
opportunity
hang on
to
a second.
ask questions.
Okay.
Reference to the recent officer-involved shooting.
Chief, I know.
To my knowledge, there were only 2 who were shot.
All right, wait a second.
All right,
Chief.
hold on.
The investigation is still ongoing. But also too, let me say this. We self-reported that. We self-reported that.
Hey.
Antonio, let me finish, Antonio. Okay, we're good.
All right, let's let Chief answer.
We're good.
Hello, my name is Abby Long. I've heard a lot of talk about the DOJ and there not being any changes needed to the CBA, but I'm wondering how we plan on implementing an early warning system or identifying troublesome bad patterns in officers when we have a provision in the CBA that states that documents of supervisory files are destroyed after 1 year.
Already in place. It's been operating for quite some time. And that wasn't before 2020, but we have it in place. And that is a system that does give supervisors the opportunity to see if there are some indicators of officers' behavior that needs to be notated and looked into further. So that is already in place.
I hear you. WFPL has reported
sorry,
that
I can't
system.
hear you.
I said I hear you. WFPL has reported that system is not being utilized. I believe.
It's being utilized.
Okay. How are you tracking patterns if they're being destroyed after a year?
So on that note, that's one of the reform requests that we received from a document that the Urban League provided us with, is to retain records longer. I agree with that. When we are in our collective bargaining agreement, we are going to advocate for a change to that position to retain documents longer. There's also new technology that is available where that analyzes body cam footage just in the not for incidents, but just in the ordinary course that can help with training, but can also help identify some patterns. And we are actually reaching out to seek some federal funds for some of those. We think that would be a step in the right direction towards that early warning that you're referring to. So we are taking additional steps as well to try to achieve that goal.
All right, I think I hate to say it, only time for about one more. So I don't know how you all want to do that. Okay, but we need to get right to the question.
Okay, this is my question. I was kind of put out with the meeting that was scheduled here today on several levels, and I'm going to get to my question real quick. One, the exclusivity of the meeting, the timing of the meeting, the location, day, and the lack of child care. Last question, define community for me. That's a word that we've been throwing around here loosely, and I don't see my community in the room. There are 9 divisions in the West End. I see a couple of aggregations of black people, but I don't see the community. I'm a lay person. I'm not with anybody's group. I don't see or hear my voice in the room. Yet what your policies are, they affect and infect me. So can someone please define for me what you're highlighting as a community? Considering the DOJ pointed out the community that was wreaking the most havoc, the black community. I need these meetings in our neighborhood centers, not Fraser Historical Center. Let the meetings go to us. And if you're serious about hearing what I have to say, allow me to speak. Because as a black person, we've never been monolithic. We are diverse. So the Urban League can't speak just for me. The NAACP can't just speak for me. We agree on some things, but I'm an individual. And so I may not see it in the vein that they see it in. So the next meeting, could you be authentic and inclusive and not exclusive?
I'll let you all respond to that. Well, and we are going to talk about at the end of this where more meetings are going to be held throughout all communities. So that is coming up. So do you all want to respond to that? And I apologize. We'll do one more, but then
the only thing I will say is I appreciate that input. I think all 4 of us on this panel were invited by the Fraser to be a part of this. I'm out across from west to east, south to north, the middle, throughout the city every day. We've been doing community forums elsewhere. We're going to churches. We're happy to go to other places. That the DOJ is coming into town the week of April 10th, and I don't know where they're doing their meetings. They're in charge of that. We will provide that feedback to the Department of Justice as well to encourage them to have those meetings spread throughout as well.
All right, real quick.
All right, this will be a final question.
Hello,
Yes.
can you hear me? My name is Shonda Lee. I'm a community activist of protest, and I have an organization called Feed the Mind. Qualified immunity is the legal doctrine that shields government officials, including police officers, from being held personally liable for actions performed within the scope of their official duties, unless their conduct violates clearly established statutory constitutional rights of which a reasonable person would have known. What is y'all's thoughts on qualified immunity and why we can't get rid of that? I believe that when a police officer commit a crime, they should be charged, convicted, locked up, and done double time because they're supposed to protect and serve. what's the answer? Because what's y'all stance on qualified immunity, and how do we get rid of it?
I'll go first on my comment. I believe that every officer that works the job should have qualified immunity, and it is qualified, meaning that if they do go and break the law, they should not have qualified immunity. They should be protected because they went out and actually broke the law, and they need to be held accountable. I've said up here the whole time that if officers go out here to do this job and commit a crime, they need to be held accountable.
Do you see how many officers Slade is noted in this DOJ report who have not been held accountable for their crime?
And I look forward to reviewing that report.
Every night with their family and eat dinner.
All right, let's let him answer.
I look forward to reviewing the same report that they received
When the
before we're able
names
to do
come
that.
out. When the names come out. All right.
Yes, my name is Lanita.
And then we've got to be done. Oh, let's put a mic up to you. Come up here.
Several businesses in the neighborhood, but ultimately, I'm a mom. 2 years ago, and you said you're new. March 9th, 2021, my kids and I were ambushed at 7th and Hill, age 16 and 11. The 11-year-old shot 7 times in the leg. My son shot in the back. I'm still waiting on LMPD to come by and check on us. And it's sad. It is sad. My kids ask often and randomly, have you heard anything? And it's sad to be a victim and nobody comes to see. I can handle me. My husband and I can handle these children as well. But to see a police officer, you all say you're here to protect and serve. It would serve a good purpose if you'd start checking on the victims as well.
Anybody? Thank you.
What can we do about that?
Thank you very much.
What was your name, ma'am? I didn't hear you.
Gant, L-A-N-I-T-A. Gant, G-A-N-T, March 9th, 2021.
Would you
Ms.
all
Gant,
like to respond? Thank you.
My
dear.
response is, Ms. Gant, first, I'm so sorry for what happened to you and your family, and thank you for that feedback. I recently met with another organization called Mothers of Murdered Sons and Daughters, where they meet on a monthly basis, and they provided similar feedback. And the chief and I, and to go back to the budget request, that a question was asked about the budget earlier, one of the things that we are going to be proposing in our budget request to Metro Council is to address the exact issue that you just raised, because victims in crime of Louisville should not be ignored. And we need to improve the services that, whether it is LMPD, whether it's social workers, whether it's any other aspect of government, should be there and available for you. And so we are proposing to add money for several individuals that will be solely dedicated to enhancing victim support services in our city.
All right, as we start to wrap up, just one quick question that I do want to ask. The search for a police chief. Where are we in that? And I guess, the interim chief, are you interested in the job?
So in terms of the process there, we have followed the city procurement guidelines, and we just recently engaged a search firm. They are now going, the next phase of the search is to seek community input. And so they will have forums and things like that. We will follow the suggestion that you have. 1 second, Councilwoman, then I'll let you chime in here. And so in terms of how we receive feedback on that, and then candidates will be identified by the search firm, and ultimately a decision will be made over the next several months. And my understanding, well, I'll let you speak for yourself, Chief. But
Thank you for the question. Yes, I'm interested, but my thing of it is, there's no ego here. There's no arrogance here. My thing of it is, I want the city to be healed. I want LMPD to be the best department possible, and I want the community to receive a chief in which you're able to work with, and that the administration can work with. And if that's not me, then that is not me. And then you allow someone to be here in order to move this city forward. Because at the end of the day, the services must be rendered. You must feel protected and feel served, and want to see this city progress forward. And so again, at the end of the day, I will apply for it. I want to continue the work. I know that changes can be made and more progressive changes can be made given that opportunity. But at the end of the day, what is best for Louisville?
Councilwoman Hawkins had something to add.
I believe it used to be that the mayor's office, when you search for a chief, you guys had a search committee. And in that search committee, it was someone from Metro Council, it was someone from the community. Who sits on that board for the search committee to find a chief?
Well, there's not a search committee per se. There's a search firm. There'll be various forums for community input. And then I will certainly reach out to others to include on a panel to help interview. And I will include somebody from Metro Council.
Is it a board, or who is going to select the chief position? Is there anybody that sits on the committee?
I will select several other individuals to advise me to participate in those interviews. Ultimately, the chief is accountable to the mayor, and both the chief and the mayor are accountable to the community. And so I will be making the ultimate decision as to who is the permanent chief of police.
All right, we're going to go ahead now and...
I'm sorry, can I say something on that? Might I encourage you to be non-traditional? Because you keep hearing the same old voices from the same old people. Try something new. My name, hold on, baby. My name is Monica Thomas. I go to these meetings every week, hearing the same old cyclical conversations, and I'm not hearing sincerity nor authenticity. Now, if you want to make change, get a layperson like me. That's right. I'm not running for office. I have skin in the game. I don't care to be on anybody's in-breath. Allow me to sit on any of your boards, and I will represent well.
All right, I just want to kind of repeat what you said for Metro TV because you didn't have a microphone on you. Just people in the audience saying that they don't want the same old voices, new voices, and a woman here just offered her name to sit on that committee. All right, so just so everybody on Metro TV could hear what was happening here.
So we want to give each of our panelists the chance to make a closing statement about the way forward and how we achieve it on the heels of the DOJ report. So we'll start with you, Mayor.
I appreciate everyone's input. I think it's important. Having conversation is important. Listening and learning for me is important. And we expect to be judged on our actions. We understand there is a demand for action. We have already taken action, and we will continue to.
Chief.
We're all a community, and I'm looking forward to making those necessary changes and moving forward for the best of this great city. Thank you.
Brandon Lincoln.
Thank you for allowing us to be here, and we want the best trained officers for this community. We want to work with you guys, and we absolutely love doing this job day in and day out. We know that there needs to be some changes, and we're willing to work with the administration on that. Thank you.
Dr. Burse.
Okay. In our statement, we said the Louisville branch NAACP is ready to work with the mayor, the police chief, LMPD, the inspector general, the consent decree monitor, and all others to ensure the implementation of corrective action needed to make Louisville a model city where all citizens are treated with dignity and with justice. And I will close with one comment. I think that as we talk about these things, people are looking for something big and grand. It takes a small step to move forward to do that. To you, the mayor and the chief, I've asked you all about the officer who was suspended for telling the press about the racial problems within LMPD. And I asked specifically that he be reinstated and given back the suspended money that he got. I'm still waiting.
You wanted to talk about that this is the first of many. This is one we had here, but I know you all are having several.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate that setup, Rachel. So we understand that everything is not going to be accomplished today in one gathering. There will be multiple opportunities for the community to engage all across the city. The Office of Equity definitely values our partnership and relationship with the Fraser History Museum. And we look forward to making sure that we are making more events accessible to community members at large. We hope that folks who were not able to actually make it into the space today due to traffic or other factors are able to catch it again later on live stream. Again, we definitely value community input, and we invite you to become part of the solution. The Office of Equity is set to roll out an initiative called Truth and Transformation, designed to work on establishing a level of trust and relationship building with LMPD and community. It's going to take community action, so I really am asking for folks that are in this room today, for folks that are viewing virtually, to come be part of the solution. Please contact Office of Equity at louisvilleky.gov for more information on this upcoming rollout and how you could be part of the operations team, and of course helping to guide policy and procedural changes that we all, I think, can agree need to happen to, again, move the city forward, make LMPD the best police department in America and a city that we can all be proud of.
And I want to we do thank you all, everybody, for coming tonight. We really do, for participating, for caring, because you care, because you want to hold our city accountable as well as the police department. I thank you all for coming tonight, and again, this was just one of the first out of the gate that we wanted to be part of, to offer a space to have this conversation. There will be many others to come, and I really do appreciate and value everyone who came here tonight. Thank you all for making the effort. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.